Hello, this is my review for Game Design Book of Lenses by, I don't know, bro. I don't know this guy's name. If you search that up, you'll find a book, bro. It's Game Design Book of Lenses. So it was kind of like, I guess one of the first things that, I guess the major critique that I have for this book is I wrote down, he talks a lot about irrelevant bullshit, right? And then the number one thing I highlighted here was just go through all the lenses, you know? It's kind of like you've heard the 50 laws of power. Go read like when someone talks about the 50 laws of power, right? Don't read that fucking book, bro. First of all, I have it. It's long as hell. And all you need is the 50 laws of power. You know what I mean? Um I think when it comes to things like that, keep that in the back of your mind. So in the case of game design, a book of lenses, I don't remember the amount of lenses, but sorry, the um the one thing I would say is go through the book. Actually, don't even go through the book. Search it online, or if you do end up, going through the book, just get a document, make a Word doc, Google Doc, whatever, and just have the 50 lenses there. Make it into flashcards. You don't need the entire damn book. Um, if you do need some. With AI, bro, like the AI can help you flesh things out. If you want to reference the book, if you do have a lens, you would just pick a lens, maybe mark what chapter it is, what page it's on, and then read the area around the lens if you really need some elaboration and some of his personal anecdotes and whatnot. But I would say just all you need is the 50, whatever amount of lenses he gave, and just that's it. You don't need it's a long ass book, bro. The book is literally how many pages? Give me 1 second. Oh yeah, so it's the Art of Game Design by James Shell, right? This book is 518 pages. You don't need the 518 pages. All you need is I don't know how many pages each. Maybe 2,000 word tops, right? Just 2,000 words, 2,000 characters. I don't know. You just need the lenses. The other things that I found interesting were, let's see, the tips, right? Throughout the book, there's these sections that it just literally says tips like brainstorm tip, unconscious tips. Um, I also put, let's see, the 8 filters, the rule of the loop, the 8 tips of prototyping. Um, let's see, I also put character tips, the feeling of freedom, interest curves, um, the 12 most common game balance. There was one page on like foundational versus decorational. But yeah, that's kind of it though. Like that's all you really needed. You don't need that 518 pages. Like if you have the confidence to go out and build a game on your own, not like an industry person, chance to build a game, it's it's like I think a game is really a good example of being a polymath because you have to be decent if you're making yourself, right? You have to do the storytelling, the level design, the puzzles or whatever, a lot of creative stuff, also the programming, you know what I mean? If you're able to go on this journey and do these things, um a lot of the stuff the book provides is you know It's not impactful. No, I don't see much value in it. Not that I don't see value, I just feel like it's common sense if you grew up playing video games like a normal person in 20 whatever, like in this era, right? If you grew up playing any type of game, if you grew up playing games on Steam, playing Roblox, right? Which is like YouTube for games, and you've experienced enough games, you know, it's whatever. Like you don't need that. Like your intuition is, it might be telling. It's like at best, some of the stuff the book um just verbalized things you understood intuitively, but at the end of the day, you know, you don't. Do you have to verbalize anything? You don't have to. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. Again, I didn't get any wow moment, but there is a lot of like value. Don't get me wrong. There is a lot of value. But it's to each their own because we are blind to ourselves and everyone has gaps. So in terms of my own personal gaps, this book didn't really address anything. It gave me a lot of food for thought. I do appreciate the lenses, and if you could get anything from this video is it is a long book, but if you really want the most of the value is just get a list of all the video game lenses that he provided and all the tips. By tips, I don't mean like advice or quotes or anything. There are little sections in the book where it says tips. You know what I mean? That's worth it, and the lenses are worth it. But all in all, though, like depending on who you are, um, you might find value in the book. So I'm not gonna knock it off, but I am gonna give it a 6 out of 10. You know, um, little fillery. It's okay. You know what I mean? It's okay. Um, there's gems here and there, but I won't say it's very like meaty. You know what I mean? And for me personally, yeah, like one thing I really realized with this book is that, man, a lot of these game dev books are very game emphasis designer, right? And then at the opposite end of the spectrum of game designer would be a book like game programming patterns. That would be like the opposite end of the spectrum because one, these game design books I feel like don't really help building a game. They help you describe, you know what I mean? But it doesn't help build a game. Like baseball, basketball, and whatnot are games, you know? Children play games. But what is a game? To me, a game, it's like an agreement of rules, right? That we just agreed to or whatnot. But I would want a book that kind of dives into that concept a little bit more because I could read this book, a game design book of lenses. It's not going to help me create soccer or football or basketball or any sport because those are technically games. Because am I really going to sit here and ask, how do I want the players to feel when they watch this sport? How do I want the field to look like? Oh, the goal, right? The net. What type of net is it? How do you score? Maybe we should use elbows. I mean, it's not gonna help that though. But it doesn't help with like creating a game. You know what I mean? So I have to figure out maybe another type of book until I find a book that kind of like clicks for me. But all in all, I mean, everyone's different. For me, I don't care too much about the artsy whatnot stuff because to me it's kind of like obvious. But the other issue I have with this book and the two other books I've read, which is Game Design Theory and Practice by Richard Howes and Level Up, is that they keep talking, going on and on and on about these players, player. And I realized that this isn't a book for independent developers. A lot of these game design books are for employees, all right, of game design studios. It's really books for a career at a game design studio or some shit like that, not for an independent developer. The reason I say that is because they go on about this player, and this and that, and I feel like there's such an external focus. And to me, game, who is this? First of all, I think this is one of the things that I think is totally off. Is who the hell is this fictional player? You know, some of these books. I mean, I've skimmed some other game design books, and they keep going on and about a player. Who the hell is this player, bro? Like, to me, when it comes to a game, you are building the game. There is absolutely zero reason to ever think about a fictional player. There is no player. There is only you, which is why I find these books so stupid. Unless, you know, you work at a company and it's your job and you have to maximize shareholder value. You know what I mean? Then it kind of makes sense. But then even then, though, it's like, you know, have that data analytics team figure that shit out. You know, that's not your role, right? They'll tell you who the player is and the demographics or whatnot. Okay, fine. But that's not who I am, though. I'm building games for me, you know, because I want to build games. And to me, if you're an indie developer, bro, you should be reading some of these books with a grain of salt, because at the end of the day, it's not about the player, you know, it's not about any of that shit. It's about you and your own amusement. And you should really be making a game for yourself and not for money or any of that stuff, because you start deviating from yourself and from your taste. And now you might find some shelter in that, though, because now you say, you know, you didn't make it for you. You made it for someone else. And to me, a game, you shouldn't think about it in the money. Whatever game you build, if you build it for yourself, with any hobby, right? As long as you build it for yourself, it is a win. Unless it's boring, then fix it. You know what I mean? As long as you make art, but I think that's part of the artistic process, is to continually get closer and closer and closer at creating and expressing art, so you can use, at least for me, my philosophy, because definitely an artist, a creator. For me, art, right, it's about the process of getting better and better, just so I can amuse myself and play with myself. I mean, I have pause, but that's, to me, like, that's the whole part of art, is like, I mean, I make art, I can make stuff just, I like to be wowed by my own talent, if that makes sense. I like to be wowed by my own genius, if that makes sense. Like, that's my perspective. You know, it's the fact that I made it is good enough for me, and that's what keeps me going. And the progress with each iteration is what keeps me going. But you have to find balance. You have to find your way. I know life comes and we have lots of responsibilities, but you just gotta figure things out. If you have, listen, people make excuses and people say, blah 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 blah, but okay, those are just your limits. Now, what can you do with those limits? You know what I mean? Like, you know, you give someone, listen, have you seen some of the artwork some people say? Listen, if you give an artist and say you can only make art with paper clips, you are going to see some amazing shit. Or they say, here, these are Cheetos. You have to use Cheeto dust to paint. And that's the only color, orange. I'm telling you, some people will make excuses, but the real one, the one that has talent and ability and is actually creative, they're going to see that as a challenge, and they're going to take the Cheetos and they're going to go make Cheeto art. You know, someone might say, oh, let me use some water and let me sculpt with the Cheetos. Someone else might say, let me take these Cheetos and finger paint. Someone else looks at the Cheetos and says, a brush. And then they start doing shading or some shit. You know what I mean? Like, and then they wet the Cheetos or something, and then they draw, right? So, as long as you acknowledge your limitations, you get to. That's where creativity comes from. So that's one thing I had to realize as a game developer myself, is that, man, there's a reason why people say make small games, because making games can get kind of complicated. So. I don't know. All in all, I gave Game Design: A Book of Lenses a 6 out of 10. My opinion. That's it. Bye.